with the study in the book of Genesis, where we are looking at the God's promise or the gospel, how it was revealed in Genesis. The last chapter we did, we saw the sons of Jacob, two sons of Jacob, Captain Levi, take vengeance or revenge for the daughter who a man took advantage of. Well, their sister, Dinah. And the tactic they used, it was just wicked. They actually invoked their religion. What can we do? What can my son give you so he can have your daughter? They say, okay, we don't want nothing except we want all the men, young men in your place to be circumcised. Which they agreed. So that man had power. That man was the prince. They agreed. And I could imagine they convene a meeting and they talk about the health benefit of it. And on the third day, when man is the weakest after being circumcised, them men go out and kill all the men in that community. All. Now, would they fight in a cause of God or their cause? Well, the answer is their cause. It wasn't a cause of God.
I was just about to ask the same thing. How does that sit with God? You know, but you said you ask it differently.
Yeah, they were fighting their cause, and every growing up, when boys have sisters, Esther, that too loud. That too loud. Take, yeah, you can be up a little. 48. When boys have sisters, they actually protect their sisters. So they were in protective mode. Yes. And they actually murder a whole city. Now, what is so interesting is how God protect them. And that's what we're going to see in the next chapter. Chapter 35. Because of my coughing, I would like somebody to read for me. So I will do less talking.
Really want to just read until the time you stop, right?
Yes, yes.
Then God said to Jacob, "Arise, go up to Bethel and dwell there, and make an altar there to God, who appeared to you when you fled from the face of Esau your brother." And Jacob said to his household and to all who were with him, "Put away the strange or the foreign gods that are among you. Purify yourselves and change your garments. Then let us arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make an altar there to God, who answered me in the day of my distress, and has been with me in the way which I have gone." So they gave Jacob all the foreign gods which were in their hands, and the earrings which were in their ears. And Jacob hid them under the terebinth tree which was by Shechem. And they journeyed, and the terror of God was upon the cities that were all around them. And they did not pursue the sons of Jacob.
Stop there.
Wow. Wow.
Stop there. Stop,
I had my own breaks. Wow.
stop there. Okay. Remember the incident before that. The incident before that is that the two brothers kill all the young men in the place. And God now telling Jacob, arise and go to Bethel. Leave the place. Go and dwell there. Now, I want you to know that Jacob was concerned of the act that his sons did, and any father would be, because that can spell trouble. There can be retaliation for that. God step in and tell Jacob where to go. And he tell Jacob, go to Bethel. Not Tishime, not Babunu, Bethel. The interesting part now, very interesting. And Jacob said to his household, all who were with him, all, put away the foreign gods among you. The foreign gods, Jacob household had foreign gods. That scripture have always been used to prove jewelry. We're not supposed to wear jewelry. Always use that. I'm not seeing that there, but however, what is interesting is to me is that Jacob household had foreign gods. You remember when Rachel left? Go back over there. You remember when Rachel stayed? You remember when Rachel had to steal her father idol? Rachel stole her father's idol. Why did she do that? Out of everything you steal from your father is an idol, a foreign god. But we can see that act, that single thing that we know of foreign god, did not only stop with the idol Rachel stole. They had gods in on the fingers, on the necklaces, their chain, and every ornament they had. There was some element of idol, and that of itself bothered me. It bothered me that, is it now Jacob get to know that? Why didn't Jacob put that away a long time? That's a man of God. That's a man that God talking to directly. And his household have idols. Any comment on that, anybody?
Yeah, it's amazing that it's interesting that when he was leaving, Laban's household, God didn't tell him, leave the idols behind. He didn't tell him. He could have told him that because we're talking about the kind of communion they had, with God back then. And I could say further that tells me how much God is willing to work with us, where we are, without chastising, without condemning. And it reminds me of what Jesus said, God did not send his son to condemn the world. Even though he saw things that were objectionable. And we know they were objectionable because when they were going to meet God, he said, purify yourself. Put those things away and purify yourself. So there was some measure of objectionability in what they had, but God didn't tell them, you know. He brought Jacob to the place where he had to make that request of himself. He saw the need. He saw the need to ask them to put them away. Yield.
Yeah, I was gonna make a point here. This idol thing, it 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 predated Jacob and Laban and the rest of his people. But the question I'm asking there, but where did this thing, where all of a sudden we have Eden, then we have the first generation before the flood. Where all of those things coming from? Where, how they started to use with it, to use the idols, and then after they started doing, was that thing working for them? Did they see results? Why they hang on to something like this? It has been very, very troubling to me. And here we see that the early stages in the inception uh, of the family, we see that idol worship was part of it. And later on, we're gonna see that still is something that plagued them. So I'm a little bit curious about, where all of those things came from, to the point that it can influence people that an object made from stone or stick can provide. Were they getting results, or was it the devil working through that long, long, long time, and we didn't know yet?
No,
I have a comment before you
good.
continue. Okay, Claude question, when did it came about? Remember, not long after the flood, or you could say after the flood, men started doing what? Men started building and said they wanted to reach up to heaven. Then they started devising idols and say, well, if the flood come, well, before that, if the flood come, then they will have, their buildings will be tall enough. So the moment you hear all of these things means man are going astray from God. They are doing their own thing. So whenever there is no listening to God, you will find things to replace, because it is in man to worship. So how it started, I think that's the beginning of it. Then my next point will be on how is now that Jacob is asking to remove the idols and all of these things. You see, God works with us along the way. He works with us in our path, not pushing us. Because when you look at in chapter 31, that was his experience. Remember his experience in the night? The assurance of that blessing. Once again, he said that he had he was, he seen God and he did not die. So that was an encounter, a renewed encounter with him. So by the time God spoke to him again about moving, he realized there are things that he needs to take care of. And one of the things, some of the things that he needed to take care of was the removal of foreign gods. That's what I see. Thank you.
Okay. I like what Paul Claude said. No, Figure said that Jacob reached to a point where he had to say it. God allowed Jacob to go along, but I'm trying to visualize Jacob being pre-focused on Esau and not so much on running the household, because he's scared when he left Laban, and when he left, he was expecting Laban to come to meet him. He expect a fight. Then that went well. After Laban now, Esau next in sight. And right after he met Esau, the problem came up with the sons fighting, killing the men. And now I seen Jacob start being concerned now, not just about himself, but about his family. So at this point, he's asking his people, let us make it right with God. And I always say, evidence don't bring faith, because I find it's foolish that there was so much evidence in Jacob's life. If you live with Jacob for 5 years, for 7 years, you could see evidence that God, Jacob, God was blessing him. Why wouldn't someone who's seen that follow the God of Jacob? Or were they getting blessed on the other side too? And I think the latter, they were being blessed too. Not as much as Jacob, but that's what make them stayed on to their God. Because some answer, somehow, something was coming through for them. Because the idol, while they worshiping idol, that is definitely devil's worship. Anything that is not of God is Satan worship. So in Jacob's house, you had that, and Jacob was putting an end to that. Rosanna, when Faye was with us, I don't know, figure if you remember Faye that was with us.
Yeah.
Faye
Yeah.
had done something on that scripture. She had brought out something of they were engraving the gods of the nation on the earrings, on the chains. It was not just the ring, but the engravement of the god on the ring. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So so I tend to, I don't have evidence for it. I don't have evidence for it, but definitely a bracelet cannot be a foreign god. Neither an earring can be a foreign god.
Correct.
So for to use that scripture to make it a religious doctrine that Jacob told when they were going up to God to put away the foreign god among them, purify yourself and change your garment. Interesting. Change your garment. Was the garment they had or they wore was more worldly,
Foreign God.
or it speaks something of where they come from, or it was not in line with what Jacob them would wear. I think it was not in line. So I see Jacob taking step because there is problem on the horizon. Now, instead of problem come on the horizon, listen to what happened. And they in verse 5, and the journey and the terror of God was upon the cities, not just the cities that were all around them. And they did not pursue the sons of Jacob. Because the word went out. The word was out of what these guys did.
And
So
even for emphasis, can you just give an approximate amount that creating that deba in the area? Just give us an approximate amount that creating that kind of problem.
God, do that for me, please. Give me do that for me. Give us the
Jacob, Jacob have 12, you have 12 sons. The two last little boys, you cannot count them, which is Joseph and Benjamin. You can't count them at all. So I think we're looking at we're not I don't think we're counting Reuben as well. We're counting Levi, we counting Judah, and maybe Simeon, and maybe one other partner. Because them fellas did that without the way I look at it, they maybe did that without the consent of the father and without the involvement of the servants of the father, guys who are working with him, that accompanying them on their route to where they're going. So we're looking at, if we want to even stretch it more, maybe no more.
It is a handful of people.
Handful of guys. And here you use the word cities, plural. Cities scared of those fellas that demutate our community. Wow.
No. You remember in the earlies, I always say that when Abraham wanted a piece of land to bury his wife, he could have just take over the land and nobody could touch him. You remember I said that Isaac, when he wanted the well and they were fighting for the well, he could just claim the well and nobody could mess with him because God's protection was with them. Nobody could mess with them. But the sons of Jacob now, they were not Abraham, they were not Isaac, and they were not even Jacob to wait for God to handle that for them. They handle matters. They were just as Claude, how your children will handle things now versus how you handle it. Or how you would handle things versus how your father would handle it. Them children go all out to take matters in their hand. And God, I don't see, did God sanction that or condone them? Well, God was on the hook to protect them. God had no choice but to protect them. If you think I'm right or I'm wrong, tell me. God had no choice to protect them. Why do you think I say so?
Okay, Ellison, my hand was up, but
Okay,
then you didn't hear me. So, but I still want to say
but
what I wanted to say previous on the matter of the jewelry, right? Even now, you get people with certain things on their chain, on their bracelet, or on their ring. The triquetra, signifying the Trinity. They have some people have it in chains. I don't know if you've seen it.
I've
So
seen it.
right. So when that happened in those days, likely it was things of that sort, not just plain jewelry, but likely they had these things. So that's the point I wanted to make. And then the other thing about the protection, from the time when Jacob left from his family and he got the vision of the angels going up and down on the ladder. That was the promise God made that he will protect him. So the promise had been right through of protection. So in spite of all what they were doing, that was the promise for the children of Abraham, the descendants of Abraham, and coming all the way down. when it comes to the lineage of Isaac, they had that protection, and God keep on re re like reconfirming it to them. That's what I will say. Reconfirming the fact that he is going to protect them. That's my comment on that.
All right. I like the on the jewelry. There are some chains that have the crucifix, that have Jesus Christ on the cross. Um. So yes, it's not just a chain, but a image of a cross and a man on it. So that practice, yes, still continue.
Hey, listen,
And yes,
you mentioned something there. You say the way I would handle something is not the way my boys would handle it. And that took me back to uh last year. I went to I had to do a passport renewal for my last one. So Eli and him came. Now Eli is 6'3" and very, very muscular. So we were walking past, going to the place. So when we finished, we were waiting for the passport. So we went to get something to eat. And we forced to pass through for a little. They're doing construction on the road. So it's a little 4 feet way that every people come in and pass it on instead of using the sidewalk. That's where we have to pass. So I'm looking at him ahead of me by about 10 to 15 feet. He's ahead of me, and I'm following him. And a white dude is coming up, and everybody's making room for him. Everybody's making room for him. I have to shift, and he's coming up. And I'm seeing Eli is going up, and Eli is not making room for him. And what I see he did, he just stiffened his shoulder, and he gave the guy, bam, give him a shot with his shoulder. And then afterwards, when he walked about a step or two, he turned back and looked at the guy. I'm going up to him. I say, bro, what kind of situation you putting yourself in there? He said, man, these guys have a sense of entitlement, and they have to understand who owns this place. Now, I wouldn't handle it necessarily that way, but this is how a kid that grew up in the South Bronx, that's their mindset, that's how they think, and that's how they deal with situations like yield.
all right. No, my question is still on the floor. I say God was on the hook to protect them. Is that correct?
All day long. All day long. These guys couldn't make a mistake. They couldn't make a mistake. They couldn't lose. They
Right.
couldn't
In
nothing
God's
could
eyes, they could not make mistake. God had to cover them up. And now my question is, why did God had to protect them? Why?
Promise he made to Jacob on that night
yes.
when he saw the ladder going up and down.
That's
He
in Bethel.
said, well, he said, I will protect you. I'll go with you wherever you go, and I will bring you back to this land. And I was going to ask a question earlier on, but I think you answered it when you said they were not Isaac, they were not Abraham, they were not Jacob. The answer to my question was in there, because I was going to ask, what did that promise that God made to Jacob apply to them also? And the answer was right in there. God
Yes.
promised Jacob, I'll bring you back. And
Yes.
that applied to his sons. And that's just
Yes. And
awesome.
God promised Abraham, I will make you a great nation. Your descendants will have that. So how could God not protect the descendants? No. It's God that said, I will. I will. They did not say, I will. So God was on from the today. God opened his mouth and say, I will do that. It was God's responsibility to take Jacob back to his father's place. he and his household. Figure your hand was up. That's the question you had.
Yeah, no, I just put it up because you're saying that there, saying when you mention a matter of mistake, that doesn't sound right in the eyes of
That's
church people
definitely.
usually, because they connect blessings with behavior. So
Ah,
you do that, you behave yourself, I will bless you. But you see, if you do that, then you make yourself deserving of the blessing. And blessings doesn't come because anybody deserves them. God said, I will bless you. And he did not put a condition down for Jacob. You know, you realize that he didn't put a condition for Jacob, you know. If Jacob, the one who said, if God, I will, but God never said to Jacob, if you will, then I will bless you. That is beyond awesome. You know what it is? An unconditional promise. And I do not know, I do not know what other adjectives used to describe an unconditional promise. That is mind-boggling.
it is indeed. It is indeed. You know, why I'm stressing on that is that Jacob accepted the promise of God. Jacob believed in the promise of God. Jacob walked in the promise of God. Jacob lived his life in that promise. Isaac also. Abraham also. We too have promises God made to us. And he is on the hook. And Paul understands those promises well. And that's why Paul says, you are an overcomer.
Question.
Hold on. Paul says, you are an overcomer. Paul says, you are more than a conqueror. John stretch it and say, you that believe in God, you cannot sin. Now, Paul even say, he justify you when you were enemies with him. Because he promised to save his people. I will cause you, I will. He even placed you in heavenly places. Can we today still have, while we claim to be as Jacob, but in our household, still have the foreign gods? And we put a blind eyes on it. Yes, it's possible, but God will bring us to a point. God, not the church, not the pastor, God will bring you to a point where you have to get rid of it. Because unto him that is able to keep you from falling and present you faultless. He's able to do it and he's able to present you faultless. Not that you don't have fault, but he presenting you faultless. Not that Jacob did not have fault, not that Jacob's sons were not deserving of a spanking, a good beating from the cities, from the men of the city. But God buffered that. The terror of God was upon the cities, not the city, the cities around. So they were just afraid to pursue Jacob. Go ahead, Claude.
Okay, we saw, going back a little bit, we saw the gods that Leah had, and then you just mentioned how Jacob told his children to get rid of the gods among you. So that was a well-established fact that there was some kind of idol worship going on between the children of Jacob and his wives. Now we saw that when they went to, I think when they came up against the guys at Shechem, they won the battle, and Shechem guys were totally destroyed. So we look at that as evidence of the blessings of the Lord on them. The question to you is, the blessing pronounced on those boys, the father and the boys, was that a spiritual blessing or a physical blessing? That's part A to the question. Part B to the question, was there an expiration date? And based on the answer you're going to give me, I have another question to give you. Was there an expiration date on that blessing? Pay attention to the two questions I ask you. The physical,
yes.
The physical is the battle. They go in there and they demute fellas and they go and do their business. The one blessing, the other one is the spiritual blessing. So I'm asking you, was there an expiration date on that, or it went to infinity?
Can anybody answer that? Anybody? I believe that the blessing was a physical and a spiritual blessing.
I think you said for people to answer.
What's that?
I thought you said for you giving people time to answer.
Well, I say, can anybody answer that? I want somebody to answer that.
I wanted to come in to say, yes, it is both physical and spiritual blessing. Right? Claude's other part about saying whether it has an expiration date, I will say until the seed come. And that will bring us to the new covenant. Because there he said that there is neither Jew nor Greek, neither male or female, but we all are one. So that blessing that was there for the Jews, only for the Jews, while they were supposed to impart it to others. But Jesus came and he just break down that entire line and brought that blessing to everyone. So that's my answer, based on my thinking. Claude?
I'm there.
Anybody else?
Anybody else?
I would like to comment on that when I return on verse 9.
All right. Again, pay attention to the things I'm mentioning.
Yes.
Idol worship is in the man's house. His daughters have idols hiding all over the place. They have all kind of idols in their ears, but yet still they're successful in battle. So I'm asking, so remember the question, did that which regardless of the condition that they were in, and yet still successful in battle, did that have an expiration date? Continue. So when you get to that point, you'll probably figure where I'm going with that.
Okay. All right. Let's continue. Figure read from figure read from 6 to 10 for me, please.
Before I read that, I put something in the chat. I didn't want to forget. Because I remember the statement I read many years ago. It says, I put it this way. There's a prophet who said, the promises and threatenings of God are alike conditional. Not sure if anybody ever came across that.
Say that again.
The promises and threatenings of God are alike conditional.
Oh, I heard that before.
And that is rather interesting because I do not see condition attached to the promise God gave to Abraham, and he renewed to Isaac, and he renewed to Jacob, and the condition. Say, I'm going to bless you. But that prophet said otherwise. And it just occurred to me that, wow, look at things that I used to read and just believe.
And you know what? People use that and they cherry pick
Mm-hmm.
certain promises of God. Even when people use that to on the healing of God, they always tell them, go and sin no more.
Mm-hmm.
At his healing is conditional based upon your faith. Or they say, every time God Jesus heals somebody, it is your faith made you whole.
Mm-hmm.
Cherry picking those that suit that, where it have healing that just across the board just heal people and they're nothing about their faith.
Right.
So God's promises to Abraham and Jacob was not conditional
That's right.
up to a point. Mm. Up to a point.
I'll leave the rest for you to take care of.
Okay.
Read from verse 6, you said.
Yes.
So Jacob came to Luz, that is Bethel, which is in the land of Canaan, he and all the people who were with him. And he built an altar there and called the place El Bethel, because there God appeared to him when he fled from the face of his brother. Now Deborah, Rebekah's nurse, died, and she was buried below Bethel under the terebinth tree. So the name of it was called Alon Bakuth. Then God appeared to Jacob again when he came from Paddan Aram and blessed him. And God said to him, your name is Jacob. Your name shall not be called Jacob anymore, but Israel shall be your name. So he called his name Israel.
All
And
right.
God said to him, all right.
Good, 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 good.
And God said to him, I am God Almighty. Be fruitful and multiply. A nation and a company of nations shall proceed from you, and kings shall come from your body. The land which I gave Abraham and Isaac, I give to you and to your descendants after you. I give this land.
All right. Very interesting there, right? Up to verse 12. And I want to point out certain things there. God coming to Jacob again. Do you know? I believe Jacob is in a moment where I don't believe he knows that what happened around the cities, that God put terror in the city. I don't believe he know that. He just know that God tell him leave and he's going. And Jacob should be in a down moment now. On top of that, Rebecca's nurse died. And death is death everywhere in your family. And God chose at that time to appear to Jacob. That is comfort. And listen to what God says. God said to him, your name is Jacob, right? But it wasn't the same God that told Jacob before, you shall no more be called Jacob, but Israel. And listen to what God is telling him again. Your name is Jacob. Your name shall be no more be called Jacob, but Israel. What is so what is so significant of that at that moment? Is there any significance in God telling Jacob at that moment in his life, your name shall no more be called Jacob, but Israel?
Reassurance, man.
Reassurance. Don't you believe Jacob needed that at that time?
Listen, I like the way you presented that that last couple of minutes, and I'll tell you why. And you entered into the character called Jacob. You entered into that character. And you are as though living that, where Jacob is a real human being. And things are happening, and Jacob is fearful. Jacob children commit offenses, and Jacob is scared to death. What is going to happen to him? All along the line, God tell him that. But is Jacob remembering that amidst the fear that he have passing through the communities? Is he remembering that? Is his fear stronger than the assurances of God? And to put yourself in his place is to bring about some kind of understanding of what the guy is going through. Maybe thinking alone, probably think God abandoned him. All of those things that may be running through his mind. And God saw that. And God came and checked him out and give him the reassurance. Folks, that is our existence. The same thing. God may do something great for you. Huge, huge. And 6 months later, your back is against the wall and you forget all the things that God has done for you. All his great, all these his hands of miracle. You forget that completely. Why? Because the current situation you face in is stronger. What God did for you is behind your back. You've seen something in front of you and you're not sure how God going to handle it. And bro, you're scared like hell. Yield.
And that's what I want to leave us with. That greedy reassurance of God in the time of crisis. God came back and basically promising Jacob something again, Israel means you are an overcomer. Jacob, you have overcome already. Your name is no more Jacob. Remember that. Israel, you are. You remember, you fought with God and you overcame with God and man. No man in no city can touch you. And your children. Sorry about that. God, even at that moment, let Jacob recognize your descendants, kings going to come from that. You know why that part is also important? Jacob also is fearful that they might take revenge on his sons. And if they take revenge on his sons, what happened to his descendants? God tell him, reassure him by telling him, kings is going to come from you.
Okay,
No,
can I make my point,
wait,
Ellison?
go ahead.
Already, I'll not put my hand up.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Okay, you said mostly everything I wanted to say, but here's my point. God is saying to Jacob, imagine Jacob has, I guess, 11 sons already and a daughter. His wife, which is Rachel, is expecting Benjamin. But God is saying to Jacob, be fruitful and multiply. Because he's speaking to him. Be fruitful and multiply. To a man who's on his 12 or 14 children, right? He's saying to him, be fruitful and multiply. But I see that blessing not just stopping with him, but at the pronouncement of his children. Like you said, kings will come out. Don't worry about what has happened. That blessing goes on and on because I already promised Abraham, I'll make of you a great nation. So there's no way it's not going to happen. So be fruitful, multiply. It's not going to stop with you. It will continue. Thank you.
I love that. I love that. Anybody else? Now, going back to Claude's question on the condition, is there a condition in that blessing or does it continue? That blessing says all families of the earth will be blessed. The promise and the blessing, all families of the earth will be blessed. That was pointing to Jesus Christ. I'm speaking. That was pointing to Jesus Christ. And when God told Jacob, your name shall be no more called Jacob, but Israel, we can see that statement in the New Testament now comes out from the descendants of Jacob, who are now called Israelite, not Jacobites, but Israelite. Paul says, to be an Israelite, you have to overcome. After the cross, no man could just attach to that blessing by lineage. It came from acceptance of Jesus Christ. However, I still believe the physical blessing to the descendants of Abraham are still there. Good.
It's still okay. I was looking at, I was pinpointing a specific incident, the incident that occurred where Judah and Simeon them went to the guys from Shechem and beat them up, and then they were victorious, and the guys could not. So I was asking whether or not that would continue indefinitely, or would there be an expiration date on that? And I believe that came to a halt, because there's a lot of times that Israel went to war and they got their behind kicked. There are several. Assyria, I can't tell you how many times Assyria benched them. The Moabites, the Egyptians hit them. Is the Hezekiah died when he tried to stop the Egyptians from passing. I mean, so it went on and on. So that was the reason I'm asking if that would continue indefinitely, or was there sort of an expiration date on it, or if it stopped, what caused the stop? Because things didn't change. Israel continued to do idol worship, but here we saw even when they did idol worship, even all of what they did, God still protected them. So how was the rug pulled off from under their feet when they went to battle and lost? What happened? What changed?
At one point, they had to be responsible. They had stopped believing in God. Whenever it wasn't just sin, they had stopped believing in God. And things changed from that covenant they make, which was as a result of lack of belief in God. Things changed when they went on and forget that God of the father Abraham and went on to serve God. You remember at the foot of the mountain when they made the golden calf and they say that is the God that take us out of Egypt.
Mm-hmm.
They made that golden calf, and they started worshiping and say, "This is the God that take us out of Egypt." I don't know if you came across that.
Yes, I came across it. But how different it is from Rachel's
That was
the
Rachel. That was not Jacob.
is that the mother? No? Is that the matriarch?
God
That's
did
the
not
matriarch.
have. God did not promise Rachel. He promised Jacob. All right, Jacob. Jacob had to bring his household under that subjection. What is nice about God? God never give us time as when we should do it.
Can I say a word?
But
Yeah, the thing is, there are times And Paul expresses it in the book of Hebrews. I think it's also expressed in the Old Testament, where God has to chastise his people, his children. And that is part of his blessing. You know, if God allows us to go or just go on our own and continue on our path, we'll destroy ourselves. And so he takes steps to bless us. He takes steps to protect us. Along the way, he has to chastise us. So Hebrews says, I think also Psalm, blessed is the man whom the Lord correcteth. How about that? Blessed is the man who the Lord correcteth. So when it looked like his arm was heavy on them, even when the Assyrians came, even when they were overcome in battle, it was not because he had withdrawn his protection. He was still blessing them, but correcting them in the process so that the blessing would be appreciated by them, not squandered, not taken for granted. And of course, as Sister Rose said earlier on, that blessing continued for the nation until the seed came. From then on, those who are Christ's are blessed in Christ. Until then, we were blessed in Abraham. I yield.
Okay. Any other comment on that?
I have a comment.
Go ahead.
It look like I lose my train of thought. Oh well. Okay. Let me think again. I lose my train of thought.
Okay. Okay. We can, but it's just interesting the moment that God reassures Jacob, and that goes all the way when God was with Abraham. When Abraham messed up, God reassure him. When Isaac messed up, God reassure him. When Jacob messed up, God reassured him. I see great lesson in that for me dealing with people. That there are times people messed up, and now is not the time to lay the law on them, but now is the time to comfort them. Now is the time to make them understand that their salvation is in Jesus Christ. And I mean, we have been to churches where that's the time they do this fellowship you. That's the time people pass you straight, make you feel less than. And that story, you can hear that over and over in churches. Figure we can continue if anybody else have nothing else.
Okay, let me make my point now. It came back.
Okay.
My point was about when God permit Israel to go into slavery in Babylon. He said when their cup full, he will do what? He will punish. He will punish them. So even if he were allowing the children of Israel to go into captivity, afterwards he would punish those nations, because they were supposed to learn. They were supposed to forsake their foreign gods, because while he was teaching Israel was to bring them back to him, these nations were to learn a lesson as well. So God would also punish nations who took Israel, that he allowed Israel, to go into captivity. So the blessing was always there. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay. Figure we continue from where we stop. Verse 13.
Then God went up from him in the place where he talked with him. So Jacob set up a pillar in the place where he talked with him, a pillar of stone. And he poured a drink offering on it, and he poured oil on it. And Jacob called the name of the place where God spoke with him Bethel. And Bethel means house of God. Not written there, but I said it. Should I go on? Then they
Yeah.
journeyed from Bethel, and when there was but a little distance to go to Ephrath, Rachel labored in childbirth, and she had hard labor. So it came to pass when she was in hard labor that the midwife said to her, "Do not fear, you will have this son also." And so it was, as her soul was departing, for she died, that she called his name Benoni, but his father called him Benjamin. So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath, that is Bethlehem.
Go ahead.
And Jacob set a pillar on her grave, which is the pillar of Rachel's grave to this day.
Okay.
Israel journeyed. Okay, good.
Let Trina, just read up to the close that one.
Then Israel journeyed and pitched his tent beyond the tower of Eder. And it happened when Israel dwelt in that land that Reuben went and lay with Bilhah his father's concubine, and Israel heard about it. Now the sons of Jacob were 12. The
All
sons
right.
of Leah were Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, and Simeon, and Levi, Judah, Issachar, Zebulun. The sons of Rachel were Joseph and Benjamin. The sons of Bilhah, Rachel's maidservant, were Dan and Naphtali. And the sons of Zilpah, Leah's maidservant, were Gad and Asher. These were the sons of Jacob who were born to him in Paddan Aram. Then Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre, or Kirjath Abba, that is Hebron, where Abraham and Isaac had dwelt. Now the days of Isaac were 180 years. So Isaac breathed his last and died, and was gathered to his people, being old and full of days. And his sons Esau and Jacob buried him.
Yes, that's a good piece. That's a good piece. Now, things happen in Jacob house that, Claude, if it happened in your house today, you will be the gossip of the tongue. You'll be the gossip of the tongue if that happened in your house today.
Oh yeah.
That um Jacob son, first son, sleep with his concubine. That I could see was trouble in the camp. That I could see was not looking good. Then that happened on the heel of Jacob losing his loved wife, his most loved wife.
Hmm.
Even though the story not in chronological order, but it happened around the time, the period of time I'm speaking, a period of time, and I'm speaking. Wait, and Jacob going through grieving his wife, and I'll tell you, if you lose a wife, you're not going to grieve her for 3 years. Even though you move on, you're still going to remember her, especially if you had loved her like how Jacob loved Rachel. And on top of that, Benjamin find the best thing to do is go and sleep with his father's wife, father's concubine.
Ruben.
Reuben.
Reuben, sorry. I
That
mean,
is good son.
that is just stop. Okay, that is just low down for Jacob. That's not a a a man that controlling his house.
Mhm.
Maybe we could say he had too much woman, he couldn't service all. So
Sounds like
Benjamin,
it.
his son help him out. But with all that, God was with Jacob. All what you see Go on there. God was with Jacob. Jacob never turned away from the promise. Jacob lived. He sucked out the energy out of that promise. Any interesting part for anybody in there?
Yes, that is, to me, that is real a low blow for him, because why I'm saying that is Rachel passed, and that's Rachel's maid, right?
Yes.
So he has two loss in one go, because his favorite, his loved wife gone, and the maid that his loved wife gave to him as a concubine, his son went and messed up with her. So that's two loss for him. So,
So
so
I
you can
believe.
imagine
Right.
his turmoil, right? And within that same chapter, then it's going on. Then he has to bury his father. So you see, like, you'll say problems one after another, because he just left because of what his children did. Come to that new place, he had to bury, on his way, bury his wife. Then his son messed up with his concubine, which was the maid of his beloved wife. And then his father, that's just loved one after loved one that he's just going, that he's just losing. So you can imagine, to me, the turmoil that Jacob is going through at the time. That's what I see. But the story did not end there. It shows that this brother that they had more or less gone astray, even if they reconciled. Now death brings them closer, because here they are meeting for the burial of their father, which now really, to me, really come and bring them back together. Although you get many times nowadays, when death comes, you have one set of family pulling there, one set of family pulling on the other side. But the Bible says that Esau and Jacob, or Esau and Israel, came together and they buried their father. Thank you.
So listen,
Go ahead.
now we get to find out where that thing came from. When Paul say it has been reported among you, some of us sleeping with only for the wife. That was in those fellas' jeans, man.
I get you.
That was in those fellas' DNA.
I get you. Now, by coming, Jacob and Esau coming together to bury their father had to be a miracle by itself, because these two guys, death was on the horizon for one of them, and now they could come together and unite to bury their father. In the next chapter, you saw that Esau decided, well, he cannot stay in that land anymore. He had to move on, because there was not enough space for he and Jacob. And Esau the warrior, who wanted to kill Jacob for the birthright, who wanted to kill Jacob because Jacob stole his birthright, he decided he's leaving, he's not staying. So Jacob could be at peace. And all that is the working of God. Yes. All that is the working of God. Yes. The working of God. And we see how God consider energy. Have a look at disturbance there. Come. No, not going. Stop talking. Okay. I'm home alone. That's why. So that happened on the eve, or that happened. We see that God coming to in rescue of Jacob or not just Jacob, but the promise that God made. He had to keep it. So Jacob had peace with his brother, and that was a good peace. That tells me how much I can trust God to work out things for me in my life when things seems to be going nowhere. Because at the beginning, Jacob did not know how he and his brother would end up. Jacob could not even fathom being at the burial of his father. But when God make his promises are sure. His promises are sure. What I plan to do at the end of Genesis is now we have to go through all the promises that God made to us in the new covenant and how we can take hold of it, believe it, and live it out or in our life. Let it be part of our existence. That's what I want us to focus on. While we're going back looking at Jacob, our focus should be forward, not backward. What the promises mean to us. Stop it. Okay? That's what I want to see. Anybody else? Anybody else? I saw we had. Oh, patient is gone. Okay. Oh, so patient is gone. But we are Lynn. Lynn, good afternoon. Nice having you.
Yes, my life.
Yeah, good evening.
Right. What I wanted to say, let's not forget that God has made a covenant with us as well that He will not leave us. Sometimes, in spite of what happened or what we encounter as like Christians, with Jacob and all what he done, God is still telling us that. Don't forget, I made a covenant with you. I made a covenant with you. And as Christians, we don't have to forget that as well. Okay? It's not only for Jacob, it's for us as well. That's my point.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay. Well, with that, the next chapter we'll not go through that now, but I will not even go to the next chapter. I'll do the one after that one. We'll not do 36. Sorry. Yeah, we'll not do 36, the family of Esau. Will because in that chapter it don't have nothing of the promise. Nothing of the promise in 36, but in 37, chapter 37, the Joseph dream, we will see how the promise continues because it just shows how many wife and children Esau have in 36. In chapter 37, that dream of Joseph is full up with promises. It's full up not just promises, but the promise how God is when God say, I will be with you, how God work it out for Jacob. I pray that as we keep studying the promises God made to the forefathers, we too will see that he made promises to us too. And we are included in the everlasting promise is that he will be with us until the end of the world, on the end of time, told the disciples, I will never leave you, I will never forsake you. I can claim that promise, that he have not left me, he will not leave me, and he will not forsake me. Even though things are not going as I want it to go, I can rest assured that promise is sure. Thank you.